Alright, so I feel like all I've been seeing the past couple of months is let's take the Smash roster and cut it in half for the next Smash game, right? Cool idea, you know. I feel like it's a little bit overdone at this point. Nothing wrong with that though. Everybody has their own opinions, everybody has their own characters that like they want to see, you know what I'm saying? So cut the roster in half, you know, let's do that. I want to change it up a little bit more than that though. I want to cut it down to just 12 characters. I'm talking just like the original Smash 64, which had 12 characters. What if we cut the gigantic roster of Smash Ultimate down to just 12 characters? How would it look today? So today what I will be doing is I will be cutting the roster down to 12 characters, and we're gonna pretend that Super Smash Bros. Is a brand new franchise, right? It just released today. What would that starting roster of 12 characters look like? Now this is obviously kind of hard to do because there's a lot of characters in this game. There's over 80 characters, which is kind of crazy to say, but yeah, there's a lot of characters, a lot of fan favorites gonna be cut out here. I can already promise you that. A lot of characters that you might not agree with me including as well, but I'm gonna do my best to cut it down to 12, and we're gonna see what happens with that. So as you can see, I have two categories here. I have the starting 8, you know, just like in Smash 64, you start off with 8 characters, and then you have an extra 4 characters that are unlockable. And the 4 characters from Smash 64, they were characters that like were kind of, I'm not gonna say, well, some of them were unexpected, right? Like you probably wouldn't expect Puff to be unlockable, right? Or Ness, but you would probably expect to see Luigi in there. So it's just like the additional, you know, kind of 4 characters that aren't a part of the original starting 8. You know what I'm trying to say? Either way, 8 plus 4 equals 12, and that's what we're doing today. We're making 12 characters. So to start off, I want to go ahead and knock out the easy characters. Obviously, like the original 12 characters, there's some very iconic characters in there that I just could never see being cut out of the game. So we're gonna go ahead and include like all the obvious picks here. And honestly, out of the starting 12 characters from Smash 64, there's about 5 characters I would say that belong in this. First up is obviously going to be Mario. You can't really have a giant like Nintendo game featuring all these Nintendo characters without like the main character, right? So Mario has to stay, obviously. I'm also going to go with Pikachu, like obviously mascot of Pokemon, one of the biggest franchises, obviously has to stay, and same with Link as well, 3 of the most iconic characters of all time. And the last 2 characters from the Smash 64 roster that I think we should include, I think we got to go with Kirby. Kirby's another iconic Nintendo character like of all time, right? There's just so much history with Kirby. And the other, of course, in my opinion, is DK. I don't really see a world where DK is not on this list. But aside from that, I mean, Samus, obviously, like I said, we're gonna have to make a few cuts here. I think these 5 right here deserve to be in here the most. Samus was kind of one of the harder ones to cut out. Yoshi, I think it's kind of okay if we don't include him. Fox, same thing. Fox had like a couple good, you know, Star Fox games, which were iconic, don't get me wrong. You know, Star Fox 64, all-time classic, but that was a long time ago. And remember, we're talking as if this game just came out today, right? We're talking about like Smash was just released today. Who would be on the roster, right? I feel like Star Fox hasn't been relevant for a while. Luigi, you could obviously argue for, but I feel like there's other Mario characters that we could include, and we'll get to that later on. And then same thing, Falcon's not really like super relevant as far as like in current days, right? There's really like Falcon's kind of a legacy character. That's like a legacy pick. I think it's okay if we don't include him. And then there's Puff, which, you know, there's so many Pokemon now, I don't think we need to include Buff. Now, as far as like other characters that we need to include, we obviously have 7 more slots. But that being said, out of the starting 8, you know, we only have 3 more slots because 5 of them are already filled. So who else fills the starting 8 right here? Let's figure that out right now. I think honestly, right away, a character that has to be on here, I'm gonna go with Villager. I think honestly, Animal Crossing is a series that like has really gained popularity over the years. Obviously with New Horizons, the game just like blew up like crazy. But this is like a game that like, you know, every five or so years we get a new one. It's probably longer than that, but it's like a very popular like Nintendo franchise. Back when like, you know, obviously when Smash 64 released, it wasn't really a thing yet. I think there was actually an Animal Crossing game for the 64, but like in Japan only, something like that. Either way, it wasn't really popular back then because it didn't really exist yet. But I think in today's world, I think we kind of have to include Villager, or at least some kind of Animal Crossing rep. I think Villager makes more sense than Isabelle though. And so that's gonna leave 2 slots. The other character that I think we have to include honestly is going to be Inkling. Same thing, very popular as of late. You know, when the Wii U launched, we had Splatoon 1, we've had Splatoon 2, Splatoon 3, and honestly there's just a huge market there. And it's just an iconic character. I feel like it's like a very unique character as well. It's just kind of one of those characters that kind of sets themselves apart from the other, you know, characters on the roster. So I could definitely see Splatoon being a character that would be included in the base roster. And this is honestly kind of hard because that's already what, 7 characters, right? 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, okay, that's already 7 characters. So we have 1 more slot out of the starting 8. I kind of already know like who I want to include in the extra 4. This is tough though. This is actually kind of tough because there's a lot of characters here. I kind of have like a baseline going into this, And then, not gonna lie, I kind of forgot about Inkling. And then I thought about Inkling, and I was like, yeah, Inkling kind of has to be in there. So who are we gonna cut out for that? I know I'm gonna get a little bit of hate for this, but I think we honestly have to include Olimar. I mean, Pikmin is again a series that's kind of grown. I will say, okay, I feel like Pikmin is the game that like Nintendo really wants to like push out there. It just hasn't really become popular like that. Pikmin 4 was like a step in the right direction. A lot of new people started playing Pikmin for the first time, and they were kind of like, whoa, where's this game been? It's actually really good. And it definitely is one of Nintendo's better series, I would say. I just feel like Olimar, again, it's just like the characters that I'm kind of adding in here, I feel like are characters that really represent Nintendo, and they're very unique. Like all of them are very different. Do I like that as a starting 8? I kind of do. I think this is a good starting 8 right here though, because it's like characters from different series, right? There's no repeats here really. I mean, Donkey Kong kind of like with Mario, but I feel like that's okay. Donkey Kong's, you know, you got Donkey Kong Country, Donkey Kong 64. He's kind of got his own thing going on now. So I think that's perfectly fine. And yeah, I think that's a pretty good balance. We keep about 5 characters from the original roster of Smash 64. Then we go ahead and add 3 more newcomers, I would say. I think that's a solid starting 8 right there. So that means we have to come up with the next extra 4 characters that we will unlock. So first things first, the reason why I didn't include Luigi is because I feel like, and I made a whole another video about this, I feel like we've got to include some villains, right? Like Smash 64 had basically no villains in that game, which is honestly a shame because there's so many good Nintendo villains. So honestly, I think it would be better to include Bowser than to include Luigi. If the roster is really only 12 characters, I think it makes more sense to have a Bowser instead of Luigi, who's going to be very similar to Mario. And speaking of videos that I've done, I made a video recently about Pokemon Trainer. And again, I think it makes the most sense to include Pokemon Trainer instead of like a character like Puff, which again, you know, Puff, popular Pokemon. But if the game were to be released today, I think it makes more sense to have a character with some kind of unique mechanic, right? Being able to switch Pokemon. It's something like that, you know what I mean? It doesn't have to be the same Pokemon Trainer we have today, but I think it just makes the most sense to include Pokemon Trainer over any other Pokemon. And Pokemon is just like an all-time popular series, right? It just makes most sense that if we're gonna have repeat characters from the same series, it makes sense that it's the biggest Nintendo franchise that we're doing that for. So I think for Mario, we're also gonna include Bowser. And then for Pikachu, we're also gonna include Pokemon Trainer. It just makes the most sense to me. Now this is where it gets a little bit tricky because I kind of had an idea of what I wanted to do, but the whole Inkling pick kind of threw things off for me. I feel like we kind of have to include kind of a third-party representative here. It's kind of hard to say, right? Because like we're pretending this is the first Smash game, right? So obviously you would think it's just straight up Nintendo characters, but I feel like that's what will make it so hype is that we have kind of an unlockable character that you really wouldn't expect to see in this game because they're not really a Nintendo character, but they've, you know, appeared across a lot of Nintendo consoles and things like that. And even though I hate this character, I think it makes sense to include Sonic. I really do. I mean, by now the amount of like Mario and Sonic crossovers that we've seen, you know, Mario and Sonic at the Olympics, like 50 iterations of that game. I think it just kind of makes sense. Like it's honestly a character where you've seen like so many Sonic games on Nintendo consoles, like it might as well just be a Nintendo character. And it would just be hype, to be honest. Like, you know, you see Sonic in there and you just wouldn't expect it. Now that means that we have one final slot left for a character and it's tough. We've got lots of characters to pick from here. I'll kind of go through my thought process a little bit here. So looking at the rest of the roster, I think it's important to consider the fact that like I said earlier, if we're gonna have repeat characters from the same series, it's got to be a really popular series. So then we covered Mario, we covered Pokemon. The only other repeat series that I would really consider would be Zelda, I would say. Kirby, obviously I would love to include Dedede, one of my favorite characters. But I just feel like out of any other series, it would have to be Zelda. There's only one more slot left. So here's kind of my dilemma, right? Because originally I was thinking, before I thought about Inkling, right? I was thinking we include Ridley, right? Just so we include some kind of Metroid representation, even if it's not Samus. I was also considering, you know, the Zelda Sheik, but like where you can transform between both. So those were kind of the two that I was thinking. I'm trying to decide which one I want to include here. But then it's like we could also include Ganon, another villain as well. I really wanted to include like a Metroid rep, but I really don't see how we fit it on the roster. So I think I gotta go with the Zelda Sheik. I think that makes the most sense to me, honestly. So I guess I'm just gonna throw Zelda up there. Like, I mean, like I said, right? This would be a Zelda / Sheik character, just like how we had in Melee and how we had in Brawl. It just kind of makes the most sense to me. I feel like it gets another like Zelda rep. Zelda, obviously, like I said, one of the most popular franchises. I think it just kind of makes the most sense. And I guess we'll move Zelda over here just so we have all the repeat characters right here in line. And then we just throw Sonic in there randomly. And again, I'm kind of basing this roster off of characters that I could legitimately see being in the starting 12. Not characters that like I necessarily love their playstyle or anything like that. Or like, oh, like I think these characters will be good. It's not really like that. I'm kind of just picking characters based off of like what I think the starting 12 would look like. That being said, go ahead and fight about it in the comments. Let me know what picks I made that were a mistake. I'm sure you've got lots of things to say. But I think this is a pretty solid job, honestly. Like I said, like I was trying not to go with the Smash 64 bias and include all those characters. I cut it down as much as I could. I think we cut it down to 5 characters, and that's pretty good. And we've got all these different characters from different series, so I think this is a solid starting 12. Got a couple heavies in there, got a couple zoners, a couple like close-up brawlers. We got a good mix right here. And if you want to see more videos like this, more tier lists of my bad opinions, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, leave a like as well, and let me know if you want me to like cut the Smash roster down to 6 characters, right? Like we take 12, we cut it down to 6, we cut it down to 3, we'll keep going. Appreciate you all watching, hope you have a good day, and I will catch you all in the next video.